Hi, everybody. My name is Francesca Scotese, and I am the Internship Coordinator in the Career Development Office, and I am here today to talk to you about interviewing skills as part of our Life After Woo series. So today we're going to talk about three main things. The first is how to conduct research before the interview. The second is how to approach specific questions that you're going to be asked, mainly the tell me about yourself question, and those questions that start with tell me about a time when. And then we're going to wrap up with just a few easy ways to enhance your whole interview process to make sure that you are presenting yourself as the most competitive candidate possible, the competitive candidate that you are. So the first part of prepping for an interview is conducting research. And the first part of that process is really reflecting on yourself and being able to state and reflect on your values, your interests, your strengths, and your goals. So when you're going through this, you want to be able to actually be writing these things down, taking note of them, being able to say what's important to you, what you like doing, what you're good at, and what you hope to be doing in the future. And one quick note on like what you hope to be doing in the future. This does not have to be like a 10-year plan. This could just be something that, a goal that you have for yourself a year from today. So if you really like conducting research on childhood literacy and you want to be in a position that allows you to be doing that in the next year, that is a goal to write down. So I keep saying write these down because then you want to go into researching the position and the company, and you're going to be highlighting all of the ways that you align with both this job and the company. So if you've written down your values, your interests, your strengths, and your goals, every time you see those reflected in this part of the research process, you can make note of that. And that's in some ways a confidence booster because you'll start seeing all the ways that you really are a competitive candidate for this job. And then having them written down is going to help you start crafting more specific answers for this interview in your mind that you will then start practicing out loud later. So some ways to do this would be the most important would be reading the job description again. So really this is going to be where you see a lot of the strengths highlighted. So every time you see a job asking for something specific that you've also written down as one of your strengths, make sure to make note of those. Reviewing the company website, utilizing LinkedIn and Glassdoor, this can be a really good way to get an idea of company values. And then conducting informational interviews is, if you have time, it is hugely important because it's going to help you network. And then it's also going to give you some of the most specific details. If you can speak with people who are currently working in the company, that's going to tell you a lot about the day-to-day and the job that you're applying for, as well as what it's like to work for the company. And then finally, if you can review the company's social media, that is super helpful. Looking at all of their platforms, that can give you an idea of how they use technology, and it can also give you an idea of what they're most proud of. Like, what are they putting out there for the public to see? And then also, if you can just do like a quick search for them in Google News, that can give you an idea of like current initiatives that they're working on that would be worth talking about in your interview. So then when your interview actually starts, you're going to be asked to start with that tell us about yourself question. And this is really important because this sets the tone for the interview. So when you go into this question, you want to have about 2 sentences on each of the following. So that's going to be where you've been, where you are, and where you're going. And this is all going to be tailored to the position. So every time you answer this question, it's going to sound different. The where you've been piece, you don't have to like go super far back. You just want to think about what is most relevant for this company to know about. So that might sound like, let's say someone's applying for a research assistant position. I have spent the past 4 years pursuing my bachelor's degree in psychology at Willamette University. During my undergraduate career, I have held a variety of leadership positions and worked in multiple research labs. Currently, I am a research assistant for a lab that studies the relationship between technology and literacy in children. In this role, I lead our data collection and have managed a team of 5 other research assistants as we go into local schools and administer assessments. I am interested in continuing to support a research team as they work to develop their studies, and I would love to be able to do so as lead research assistant at X company. So they're keeping it very tailored to the job. This person has done multiple things at Willamette, but they're only talking about the positions that are most relevant to this company that they're interviewing for. So then once you've told them about yourself, you're going to be asked other questions. And a lot of those are going to start with tell us about a time when or give us an example of. These are known as behavioral-based questions, and when you hear those words, those should signal you to go into the STAR method of answering them. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. What that means is you want to give a brief description of the situation you were in and the task that you were assigned. And then the two most important pieces are these pieces right here, action and result. You want to go into what you specifically did, and then you really want to drive it home with identifying the results of that work, identifying the results that happened because of the work that you did. So that might sound like, let's say someone was asked to share about a time that they reached a goal they set for themselves. They might say, as an RA, I am responsible for hosting 5 hall-wide events every semester. Attendance at our events had been low, so my supervisor encouraged me to find ways to increase attendance. I have a strong skill set in social media marketing, so I took it upon myself to develop a new marketing strategy. I designed new graphics to promote the event in Canva and made a schedule for when and where I was going to post the graphics. I also made a TikTok account for my hall and began to advertise events there. As a result of all these efforts, attendance at my next event increased by 30%. So you can see they're showing what they did and then what resulted because of their work. It is going to be hard to, it's impossible to verbatim be prepared for every question that you might be asked in an interview. So as you're like taking notes and preparing and thinking about examples, overall, it's good to have examples that highlight your strengths, areas of growth that you might have. So highlighting self-awareness of ways that you can continue to grow as a professional, the accomplishments that you've had over the past few years that are most relevant to this job, times that you've used interpersonal communication skills to overcome challenges. A lot of times in interviews, you're asked to talk about ways you overcame a challenge, and it's very good to be prepared to talk about that. And then also, this is another piece around self-awareness, times that you did not reach a goal that you set for yourself and how you handled that. So as you're continuing to prepare for the interview process, a few other things that are important to note is, one, you want to make sure that you have questions prepared for the interviewer. I typically say to have about 5 questions prepared, because an interview is like a conversation, and some of your questions might naturally get answered throughout the course of the interview, and you want to make sure you still have questions for them at the end. If you're doing your research on the company, you're probably naturally going to think of a few questions as you see what they're advertising and initiatives that they're currently working on. And then there are always some good common questions to ask, like, what are your goals for the next year? What are you most proud of that your team accomplished in the past years? Those are some common questions that you might ask an interviewer. It is also essential that you send a thank you letter within 24 hours after the interview. People do expect thank you. I say letter in quotes because people expect an email. With how quickly technology moves now, most people do want and expect a thank you email after the interview within 24 hours. And then finally, it is so important to practice these questions out loud as much as possible. So you can book a practice interview with career development. If you book an appointment with us on Handshake, you can book a 60-minute appointment, say you're practicing for an interview. Send us the description of the job you're interviewing for, and then we can make tailored questions for you and actually go through and just model the actual phase of an interview and then give you feedback on your answers at the end of that. For the thank you letter, that's also something we can help you with. So if you are worried about writing a thank you letter and you want to know more about that, you can always reach out to one of our career advisors and ask about that, because that could be like a whole nother presentation that I give. You can also book an appointment with us if you know you have an interview coming up to have us proofread your thank you letter. And for questions prepared for the interviewer, that is totally something else that we can talk about. And if you're coming to our upcoming session this week, that could be a great question for our upcoming alum guest speaker, who is a recruiter for Abercrombie & Fitch and Hollister. They have seen many interviews, and they will be talking about what they look for when they're interviewing candidates for their company. So that's going to be this Wednesday, May 3rd at 4:00 over Zoom. And then later this week, Saturday, May 8th from 11 to 12, I will be having office hours. If you'd like to meet with me individually to talk about any of these specific one-on-one questions you might have. And then as always, we have our advising team who is available to meet with you. You're able to book Zoom appointments with us on Handshake, and we do work through the summer. So if you are, entering a job search now and you're going to be interviewing through the summer, we are still here and we're eager to meet with you. And we are just very excited for you all as you continue to go through or start the interview process. That is all I have for you today. I hope to see you all on Wednesday and on Saturday in office hours, and I wish you the best of luck as you start or continue your interviewing process.